Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm James.
And this is the Decahedron RPG Podcast.
Hi, James.
Hi, Joe.
How was your week?
I finally have my shower back, so I'm much better.
Oh, nice.
The company I work for decided to do a lovely mailing, so I've been going through the reef with calls all day, so no free time to even think.
No rest for the wicked, as they say.
I'm not wicked, I'm good. And what was your week like?
My week? Well, we didn't record last week, so we're actually going to cover 2 weeks. I did record an episode with Heather as guest host. It was my wife's birthday, so we did wife birthday stuff. I got a tattoo right there. My wife had to travel to Paradise, also known as Rhode Island, and she went there and she brought me back 2 bottles of coffee syrup so I can make coffee milk because she is a wonderful, wonderful wife. But she did not bring me back any Portuguese sweetbread because I was a fool and I didn't ask. Sigh. So anyway, I believe this week was your topic. So what are we talking about this week, James?
Table etiquette. Now, we are going to deal with the table this time. We'll go into character etiquette at another point in time.
Yes, exactly. We're doing what people do around the table, what Jim does, not what Udar, the barbarian, does in the world. Because we thought, at least I thought, there was enough material on both of those sides to make a full episode of themselves. So I made a list, you made a list. So we're just going to go through our list and riff off each other back and forth. Why don't you go first, sir?
Tables should be silenced or even off, or at the door, have a box, drop phones in.
Oh, so phones. You said tables should be silenced. I was like, my table doesn't make any noise.
Okay.
But do I have anything to say about that? I think off is a bit extreme, but they should be put away. And actually, I'm going to go with that on my list. I have item number 3 is pay attention. So you just gave a very specific example, but it's much broader than that in my mind. People should be paying attention to the game. Even if it's not a phone, there's people who like pick up the rule book and just start reading the rules instead of being engaged with the game. Now, you can say maybe that's the GM's fault for not making the game engaging enough, or maybe the spotlight is currently on somebody else and they're just trying to occupy their time. Maybe, but you should have to say their name twice when you go back to them. That's my point. And so I'm going to use that one for my item from that list. So that brings us back to you, James.
Too many books at the table. I understand you want maybe the spells from the player's handbook or another book, but I think how much material you have at the table is sometimes overkill. Limit yourself to what you need.
Number 5 on my list is share the table space. Again, you just went very specific with the book. I'm going to go a little more broad, and I'm going to say, because you put out your books, you put out your notes, your character sheet, you put out your pencil, your dice, and maybe you brought a snack to the table. Oh, your drink, you always have a drink, right? And that takes up a certain amount of space, and some people spread out. Share the table space. Sounds like the same type of item. So next one, James.
I was going to be a little more specific on it, and it's more of a question for people to think of. And I'm going to say some of these I'm going to bring up, I'm guilty of myself. I try to dial it back where I can, but what is too many dice at the table? Should you just have one set of dice in front of you, or should there be a pile of dice?
That is an interesting question. I don't think one set of dice is enough because, you have to roll 2d6 for some things, or 2d, whatever, or 3d. And so you only have one set out. Then you do what? You go through your backpack and pull out some more dice. You scrounge from others at the table. I think you're allowed a little pile. That's my opinion.
You brought out something else I'm thinking, and it's still dealing with dice. Do not grab someone else's dice without being asked. There are certain people that have superstition.
But it was my turn to give something for my list, James, and you cut me off.
No, I was adding to what I was saying earlier, so go on.
My number 1 on my list, and I'm surprised that you haven't mentioned it yet, but maybe it's more of a GM irritation than player irritation, is show up for the game. Now, I mean, life happens. We're all grown-ups. We have a real life. It's not like when we were kids and we thought high school was hard. Stuff happens. But, if you say you're going to be there, be there. And if you can't make it, let somebody know.
On that there, I think most people are better now than we were many years ago about meeting the time frame. The games are much easier to get into, especially like online games like Roll20. Today, always being to the game is an important thing, especially if they're depending on you, especially if it's an established group, and all of a sudden their cleric is gone. Who's going to heal anyone?
Yeah, I don't know why that's making me laugh. Yeah, like I said, life happens. But and I'm not really talking about that person who, okay, suddenly work called in, I can't make it. Like I said, life happens. Oh, my kid just fell from the tree and broke his arm. I have to go to the hospital. You bastard, you can't play with us anymore. I'm not talking that. I'm talking, that guy who always says, oh yeah, I'll be there Wednesday, and just isn't. All right, next item for your list.
Every player should have their own time. I think this is much more on your list than my list. But getting into that, a couple of things within that realm. Let the player who's trying to get something done start off on their own. If they need help, they'll ask for it. I'm guilty of this many a times over, where suggesting what the person's character should do. It's like, they're there to play. Why don't you let them play their character? Not have them be a sub and you play their character.
All right, I think that's pretty close to what I'm saying for my number 4, which is share the spotlight. I, as a GM, realize that every player needs their own moment to shine, and they each get their moment. If I'm doing my job correctly, I move that spotlight from person to person. There are those players that when the spotlight is on, say you, James, they will butt in and try to make that scene about themselves. And that's just not very nice, in my opinion. So we agree on that. Next item, James.
This has happened several times, and it aggravates me quite a bit. I won't say there shouldn't be any, but note passing should be only done when necessary. It shouldn't be passing notes around to, I got no better way to say it. Like
don't sow the seeds of chaos is what you're saying. I almost put this on my list. Sometimes note passing is necessary, but yeah, don't raise suspicion if you don't need to. Okay, next on my list is actually my number 2 item related to showing up is showing up on time. Even online, this one is an issue. My game starts at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever, we said the start time is, and come 7:30, people are just floating in. That irritates me to no end. At one point, I would give experience points for being there on time.
Well, I'm going to throw in, because this is also happens at work, especially when you do an online, there is some setup time to get everyone linked in sometimes. So I would normally say you want to be a little early so you can make sure that the headset, the mic is all working and that you're in the room without any issues. So everything is running the way it should be.
Next time on your list, sir.
Going to go back to being prepared. For spellcasters, and I do this many times, I actually, before the game, will get a notepad and write down the spells and maybe highlight the important things within a spell. For magic users, that's not as easy because they're not as limited as clerics are. And the same thing with the equipment list. If you have a game going, you don't want to have to go through the player's handbook or equipment book to find out what you have and what the item do. Try to have some small notes involved.
That's actually a pretty good point. I don't have it exactly on my list, but I do have an item that's close, and it was number 7 on my list, which is learning the rules. If you're playing D&D, I get it. If you're a new player, you're not going to know, oh, I want to attack them. Okay, roll a D20. But, by the time we've been playing like 7 sessions, I shouldn't have to tell you what you need to roll. I shouldn't have to tell you what you need to look for on your character sheet. Of course, if it's something weird and esoteric that's never come up before, by all means. Even if it has been, I will still help you. I'll just roll my eyes. And because we play online without cameras, you'll never know that I'm rolling my eyes. But yeah, learn the rules. Yeah, as a subset of that, know your character. So yeah, so it ties in. Next item on your list, sir.
The next thing, I'm going back to dice again. You want to make sure the dice are colored enough so you can read the numbers.
I will just give the next item on my list, and you kind of touched on it earlier. This item I called share the stuff. If you're playing and Bobby needs to roll some damage and he only has 2d8 and he needs a third one, of course, Bobby shouldn't just grab your dice. I don't know who Bobby is. Bobby Brady, maybe. Bobby just shouldn't grab your dice, but he should ask you, but you should share your stuff. I mean, if you have a certain sentimental die, I spent $20,000 for this die. It's made out of genuine Waterford crystal that was etched by, whatever. Share the stuff. If someone needs to use a book, don't say, no, you can't look at my book and hide your book. Share the book. So share the stuff. That was my thing.
Crosstalk. When you're in a game, I understand that maybe two people will be thinking of a plan to get ready for their move, but keep it to a minimum. Try to listen to what's going on so you know what is actually going on in the game, not missing some points.
So that was my point above when I said pay attention. All right. So the next item on my list is one aimed at GMs. And GMs don't have your favorite player. That's it. That's all I have to say. I don't think I need to explain that any more than that. Any thoughts on that, James?
Yes. If you have a girlfriend or boyfriend who is the player, you may not want to favor them in play.
Well, it goes the other way too, right? You don't want to go so far the way not to favor them that you're being harder on them either, right? You want to treat everyone fairly. And it doesn't have to be a mate type situation, right? You and I have been friends we've been playing for 45 years, right? If we play a game, which we often do with strangers, some might assume that I will show favoritism for you. I think James will attest that I absolutely do not.
No, you've killed a few of my characters over the years.
Next up on your list, sir.
You've gone through most of my list with what I have. So what's left on yours?
I have 3 more items on the list. The next one is player character. Part of that is what you already said about when somebody else is doing whatever, don't start telling them what to do. Your character is all alone in a room and someone says, search the desk. You're not there. Leave him alone. Let him play. But the other part of it is play your character, not the rules. If you're playing a cowardly hobbit, it's always said, I'm the cowardly hobbit, and you're in a situation where you're facing an ogre or something, don't suddenly say, hey, according to this rule system, I get a +3 versus ogres. I'll play up front so we can take advantage of that. No, play your character. Any thoughts on that?
I like the idea of where you're going. I don't always go that deep into my creation of the characters. It's a suggestion in my book.
Yeah. That's because you've played things like D&D and now awesome games like GURPS where you actually get character points for taking things like being cowardly, and then you can make your character more powerful in other areas. Next thing on my list is don't be a rules lawyer, and closely related to that sub-item, don't be a settings lawyer. Well, in the 4th novel of the Forgotten Realms series, they said that this city had, don't care.
Well, isn't that why you do your own world most of the time?
That's not why I do my own world, but it's definitely a benefit of it. But there are some established universes that I will run. I will run Paranoia. I will run Star Trek. Yeah, those are pretty much the only 2. Nothing in any rule or supplement talks about my alpha complex, though, right? That talks about some other alpha complex in an alternate universe. And usually when I play Star Trek, I'll play like original series era, or I'll play Deep Space Nine era, right around there. But I don't expect, like if we're playing original series, don't say, well, next gen, they said that there was the treaty of whatever that was signed. Yeah, don't care. That's some other universe. In my universe, that didn't happen. So there you go. Rules lawyers and setters lawyers. And then the last item, which I'm surprised you didn't bring up, because based on some of the things that you were trying to say when I said don't talk about the episode, I'm going to say smells.
You're right. You're talking about strong food.
Yeah, strong food, or there's body smells that are controllable that you shouldn't make. Just don't do anything smelly. I don't like smelly stuff. Of course, playing online, that's not a problem, but around the table. So that's my list. It sounds like we went through your list. We're running a little long, so let's close it out. Our closing question, another one from Jason. We already played the message where he sent it. What is your least favorite game mechanic, James?
Call of Cthulhu going insane.
Oh, really? What don't you like about it?
I don't like the character going insane. I hate being killed, but I'd rather be killed than just the character keep getting more insane until, he's no longer playable.
Because you're a munchkin. No.
I'm going to disagree on that.
Are you willing to do the Is James a Munchkin episode?
I would be willing.
Anyway, because Jason wrote in. We haven't gotten to that one yet. But anyway, all right. My least favorite mechanic game mechanic. I have two, and it's hard to pick, so I'm going to talk about both. One is the percentile roll. I hate the percentile roll.
Why?
You are rolling 2 dice every time, right? You pick up your 2 dice, and in the old days, you know, we used to have to say red high, right? Because they were only numbered 0 to 9, and you were rolling 2 of them and whatever. In fact, we used to have to do that for the D20. Remember those days? Anyway, you roll the 2 dice. One has a 0 on it and one doesn't, right? And so they land. And so now you have to look at both dice, and in your mind, you have to put them in the proper order. When 90% of the time, it doesn't matter. 90% of the time, it doesn't make a difference what that second die is. So why are we rolling 2 dice for 10% of the time? And so that you have to do that. You can accomplish the same thing using a D20, and you will always be within 2% accuracy of rolling it as a percentile. So I don't see the point of adding the 2 dice, and you roll them and they go in different directions. You have to gather them up, put them in the right order, and say it out, when you could just easily roll a D20 for 98% accuracy. Good enough for a game in my book. Anyway, so that's one. Number 2, which I might hate more, is the initiative system in Savage Worlds, where, okay, we have this game where we deal with dice all the time, and oops, let us whip out a deck of cards and let us deal everybody a card. I mean, and it goes out of its way to avoid ties by saying, okay, now you have to remember that a spade is worth more than a diamond, and diamonds are worth more than a club, and a club is worth more than a heart. I'm not even sure if that's right, by the way. It might be exactly backwards. I have no idea because I don't have it memorized because it's silly. Anyway, that's me. I don't like, those are the 2 I don't like.
The first one, the percentage dice, if you have time, you could throw that 100 dice and sit there for 5 minutes to let it settle.
Oh, my eyes are far too old to read that little die. So I think we've covered everything we need to cover this week. Thank you very much for joining me, James.
Thank you, Joe, for another lovely Saturday morning. And thank you to the audience for listening.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Please send us feedback. If you liked anything we said on this episode, let us know. If you disliked anything, let us know. If you feel we forgot something that's vitally important for tabletop etiquette, let us know. All the ways to contact us are in the show notes, or they're in the little outro music that you're about to hear. And again, thanks. Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Decahedron RPG Cast. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message by calling 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. Or by visiting sayhi.chat/decahedron. You can also email us at feedback@decahedron.com. Links are in the show notes. For more information, visit decahedron.com. Remember that Decahedron is spelled with a K. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. Logos by Design Cat. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those dice rolling.